anyways, like I said, I've just been volunteering here for the last, I guess it's been 4 months or so, helping out Hilary with both the Taser campaign and the Omar Khadr campaign. So anyways, I'm just going to make a few comments on the work I've done and my reactions to it really in the Khadr campaign. Because sometimes it can be pretty easy when you're reading the news to forget that really Omar Khadr is just a 22-year-old Canadian, which coincidentally is the same age I am right now, which kind of puts it into perspective, who's been held illegally essentially since he was 15 years old. And sometimes it can be easy to forget that he's not just some mysterious figure rotting away in a prison, that he is a Canadian citizen, just a kid really, who's had his rights completely stripped from him. And the thought of, he's the same age as I am right now, 22, and the thought of me spending the last 7 years of my life in a prison, really not be able to pursue any dreams or ambitions, or really just struggling to survive, kind of really puts in perspective and sends it home to you, because really no Canadian, well, nobody in the world, but it's embarrassing that a Canadian citizen who's been completely stripped of all the rights of the rest of us just kind of take for granted sometimes. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes I suppose the work I've been doing for Hilary, one of the things I was doing is I was creating a timeline of the legal developments in this case. And I guess when I first started working on it, I frankly thought he was most likely guilty of the charges against him, which I guess is besides the point sometimes, because when it comes down to it, he was 15 when he was captured. He hasn't been granted the rights of a child soldier or POW, and his guilt besides the fact. He should be granted these rights that any prisoner should be granted. But when you really start looking at the details of the case against him, it's almost shocking how weak it can be. And to think that these military tribunals, the government's just been pushing ahead with them regardless, is just it's really shocking. At the same time though, whether you believe he's guilty or innocent or anything like that, he's a 15-year-old kid who, like, when you read the welfare reports that the government has with him, you see things like how his favorite book is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and he has a particular liking for stuff like Italian food. And I believe one of the comments that really struck me when I was doing this work is, I believe he was reading the book Life of Pi at the time, and when he was asked what his opinions on it were, he made the comment that there's too much stuff about God in it. And it's like, it really clashes with the idea of a religious radical that we've been reading about in the news every day. I was like, something here is just not matching up. It almost didn't seem like the same person from when I was reading these welfare reports to when I was reading the media reports. And when I see stuff like that, like, I have a list of the books and the foods and stuff like that he's requested here. And you see stuff like he asked for, biology books because he wants to be a doctor one day. And it's like, really, this is the kid we're putting up for crimes against humanity, and he's asking for books on calligraphy and biology and math and science so he can teach himself the basics that he should have learned long ago, but he's been spending the last 7 years in detention. So really, it's just like, I just wanted to drive home the point that he's not this ominous figure in a prison and in somewhere in the world that we don't really know. He's actually just like you and me, especially look at all the volunteers around here that are my age, younger or older. Like, he could just as easily be one of us. Instead, he's having his life just be wasted away. It's a kid that seems to have good intentions. He's even the guards that have been looking after him at Gitmo made comments how, him staying there will likely just make him more radical. They've said he's a good kid that, does not fit in there. The longer he stays in Gitmo, they've said it will likely just make him more of a radical and more of a danger to people in Canada and the United States. He doesn't harbor hatred the way, some people on both sides of this war do. So really, I guess when it comes down to it, I'm not sure how much really I want to say, but I just wanted to drive home the point that in the work I've been doing here at Amnesty, I've just been blown away by how much of a contradiction there is between the images portrayed of him in the news and the images that you get when you really start reading the welfare reports and reading the first-hand accounts of the people who guard him and the people who will visit him in Gitmo. And just take that into perspective. Don't necessarily, like, when you read the comments, you go and read a story about him on CBC and you read the comments people leave underneath the story. Sometimes it's shocking the anger that's directed towards him, and you just want to shake people and be like, learn before you speak, because some of the views of Omar out there are just completely unfair. People really need to learn all they can before they make up their minds. And when it comes down to it, all that we're asking for is a fair trial. We're not asking for them to be released into the public. They just want, the evidence against them to be heard in an open and transparent manner, and for a legitimate court to make up their own decision. And if they find him guilty, so be it. But at least, he got the rights that should be afforded to him. And if he's innocent, and if a legitimate court finds him innocent, then great, and he should be rehabilitated. But what it comes down to is just the rights. Give him the rights that should be afforded to him, and let a fair and transparent trial make the final decision. Anyways, I guess Hilary will step up here, and I hope I've made sense for y'all.
So if you want to read that full list of movies and books and other things like that, you can find it on the Security and Human Rights blog, which of course I have to pitch here, but it's amnesty.ca/security. And if you look under the postings under Omar Khadr, you'll find that whole list, about 3 pages long, that Mike put together. Omar Khadr is currently in Camp 4 in Guantánamo Bay, and that's the communal camp. Prior to that, he was essentially in solitary confinement for years and years and years. And so you could say he's in like the best of the worst at Guantánamo. He's facing finally the beginning of his military commission trial, which has been delayed a few times, on January 26th. And that's 6 days after President-elect Obama takes office. And one of the realities in this case is that Obama has announced Guantánamo is going to close, but we don't know when. We don't know how. And more importantly, we don't know what's going to happen to the people currently facing unfair trials before the military commissions. Initially, Obama said he'd review all these cases and decide which should go ahead. He's actually, unfortunately, backtracked on that a bit and said, well, some will go to civilians court, some will in the States, so in the civilian court in the U.S. mainland, and some will go to some new version of the military commissions. But that's not going to happen on January 21st. And this case, we run a real risk of him being sort of lost in the shuffle. He could become sort of the final footnote of the last person convicted after an unfair trial in Guantánamo was Omar Khadr. And so there's actually 2 things you can do here today. One, you can write yet again to our Prime Minister, who continues to say it's premature to intervene. How many years, the excuse being there's a legal process underway, it's premature to act and interrupt that, so completely failing to recognize the military commissions are not recognized as coming anywhere close to fair standards under international fair trial standards under human rights law. So we're saying to him again, just because Guantánamo is going to close doesn't mean do even less than you were doing before. It means it's even more important to act now, so that Canada doesn't go down as the only Western nation not to intervene, particularly now that even the U.S. has condemned Guantánamo kind of thing. So that's one thing you can do, and that action is sitting over there. There's also an online petition you can sign to the Prime Minister. It sends a message automatically. And that's at the computers in the room where the food is. You can just dial up that action, put in your name, put in a comment. I'll race upstairs, approve the comment, and go. But there's one other thing you can do, which I think is really important. Given how many years Omar Khadr has been in Guantánamo, you can imagine his spirits not so great. He knows his case is a bit controversial in Canada. He knows his family is not exactly beloved by Canadians. So one of the other actions we're really stressing right now is to send a letter to Omar in Guantánamo. So he's one of the greeting card cases this year. And what we've done is we've added some of the material that Mike was talking about so people can personalize their letters a bit more. So if you've read Life of Pi, if you like basketball, if you've ever thought of being a doctor, these are things you can put in your notes to Omar to help him realize that there are Canadians out there who recognize the common humanity and beyond that, common interests that we have. So I really encourage you to send those letters. They do go through military censors, but as long as you keep them polite and straightforward and don't pick that as an occasion to express an opinion about the U.S. government, they will easily get through those censors and to Omar. And he does have the ability to reply them through a little card. They actually created these reply cards for the Guantánamo detainees, so they can write you a few sentences. So you'll also get a reply. He's committed to replying to as many letters as he can. He doesn't know how many he's about to get, so it's a bit of a holiday surprise from us to him. So thank you.